Hello, my name is Niladji.
I'm Joanna Grace Regan.
I'm Cyril John Alohamiento.
And this is Russell James Galang. Welcome to our vlog.
In this chapter, we will talk about his studies gym that goes that mathematical combination results, symbols, partners, and its real words understanding mathematical complex for its short study that created a better understanding nature's partner drops, which refer to the share of water drops and fluid mentioned by G. Edgar and T.J. Thorpe in 1994 were the different version according to a flow dynamics, which refer to the population and demographics. In these studies, the authors use protein and rabbits in way of simulating in the studies through a computer. And lesson the disease, which refer to the view of conversational person that will flowers. Just specifically in all sorts information, the author explained the beta rule of the Daisies flower grow as it juice flower, how to make which in responsible in application of lights of provides energy of photosynthesis. Choose teacher use the system of being simple rules can behave surprising complicated which but the water cannot be altered architect others will not be able to the surface in it. In fact, one of the reason the choose was not discovered source is the many ways or simple that similarly intends to difference we when we look below to the system but
On the surface, it is still there.
Our use of language to describe our world rests upon the existence of underlying simplicities. For today's lesson, we are going to tackle drops, specifically the shape of water drops. The formation of water droplets. The formation of the detached drop begins with a bulging droplet hanging from a surface at the end of the tap. It develops a waist which narrows, and the lower part of the droplet appears to be heading toward the classic teardrop shape. But instead of pinching off to form a short, sharp tail, the waist lengthens into a long, thin, cylindrical thread with an almost spherical drop hanging from its end. Then the thread starts to narrow right at the point where it meets the sphere until it develops a sharp point. At this stage, the general shape is like a knitting needle that is just touching an orange. Then the orange falls away from the needle, pulsating slightly as it falls. Now the sharp end of the needle begins to round off, and tiny waves travel back up the needle toward its root, making it look like a string of pearls that becomes tinier and tinier. Finally, the hanging thread of water narrows to a sharp point at the top, and it too detaches. At its falls, its top ends rounds off, and a complicated series of waves travels along it.
Population dynamics. The use of that phrase reflects a long tradition of mathematical modeling in which the changes in populations of interacting creatures are represented by differential equations, it constantly changing in size and demographics. New animals are born and old animals die. Other factors such as drought, fire, and a lot of predators, all because of the population and the changes of interacting creatures, are represented by the differential equation and even in probability. In 1994, Jackie McGlade, David Rand, and Howard Wilson of Warwick University set up a computer simulation in which large numbers of agents interacting according to biologically plausible rules and try to extract large-scale patterns from the results of the simulation. The system of rules is to set up the model main biological influences at work. For example, if a rabbit is next to a grass, it moves to the position of the grass and eats it. Second, if a fox is next to a rabbit, It moves to the position of the rabbit and eats it. This defines that a simple large-scale features emerge from the fine structure of complex ecological games.
The third and final example of mathematical regularity of nature that emerged from complexity is the number of petals of flowers. They form the beginning of the so-called Fibonacci series, in which each number is the sum of the two that precede it. The numbers that arise in plants not just for petals but for all sorts of other features displays mathematical regularities. If you look at a giant sunflower, you can find a remarkable pattern of florets in its head. These florets are arranged in two intersecting families of spirals, one winding clockwise and other counterclockwise. In sum, the number of clockwise spirals is 34 and the number of counterclockwise spirals is 55. Both are Fibonacci numbers occurring consecutively. The general arrangement of the main features of the plant is laid down as the primordial form, Fibonacci spiral shape from primordium. Successive dots arranged at the angles of 137.5 degree to each other along a tightly wound spiral, naturally fall into two families of loosely wound spirals that are immediately apparent to the eye. Here there are 8 spirals in one direction and 13 in the other consecutive Fibonacci numbers. If you use a divergence angle that is a rational multiple of 360 degree, you always get a system of radial lines. There are gaps between the lines and the primordia don't pack efficiently. To fill the space efficiently, you need a divergence angle that is an irrational multiple of 360. In particular, in many plants, the rate of appearance of primordia can speed up or slow down. In fact, changes in morphology, whether a given primordium becomes a leaf or a petal, say often, accompany such variations. So genes theoretically affect the timing of the appearance of the primordia, but plants don't need their genes to tell them how to space their primordia since that's done by the dynamics. 3 examples from very different parts of science, each in its own way an eye-opener. Each a case study in the origins of nature's numbers, the deep mathematical regularities that can be detected in natural forms. And there is a common thread, an even deeper message buried within them. Not that drops, dynamics, and daisies nature is complicated. No, nature is, in its own subtle way, simple. However, those simplicities do not present themselves to us directly. Instead, nature leaves clues for the mathematical detectives to puzzle over. It's a fascinating game, even to a spectator.